Hey everybody, have you ever thought about taking an online art class but had no idea what to expect? In this demo, I'll show you the type of things that you'll learn in all of my online classes. Let's watch. Okay, I am going to be working on some Strathmore gray tone paper, cover of it. I'll show you what it looks like. Looks like this. Okay. I have people in my class start out on this or even start out using newsprint because sanded papers for pastel are, first of all, they're really expensive, but also the other reason for my torturing everyone with using these more inexpensive papers is because if you can work on this and you can train your hand to develop a really, really light touch, you will find it so easy when you start working on a sanded sheet. So it's kind of like develop your hand, train it how to put the pastel down, and then when you feel that you've mastered that, that's when it's time to go ahead and start working with one of the sanded sheets that's going to be a little bit, going to allow you to layer a little bit more. Okay. Doing pastel is all about layering. It's about putting one color on top of another. And in order to effectively do that, you've got to develop that really, really light touch. The pastels I'm using are called New Pastels. They are by Prismacolor. This is what the box looks like. Okay. This is the 24 stick set. That's what I have people use in the class. I know there are a lot of people who have extensive sets of pastels, soft pastels, medium pastels. I like the hard pastels because they don't create as much dust. I work outside a lot, so it doesn't bother me as much, but I only use the soft pastels for my brightest accents and for my darkest darks. But I can easily do a whole drawing just with these, okay? So I'm gonna get this blocked in. The first thing that I always do when I am working in pastel, just as if I were working in oils, and I'm just gonna do the apple and the pear on this one just so I can move a little faster, is I start with an underpainting, okay? The underpainting is the most important layer of a pastel drawing or of an oil painting. It's the structure of your painting. It's how you get your drawing onto the paper, and it's how the way that you work out your values, okay? Now, I usually will do my underpainting or my underdrawing. That's what drawing in this case. I call pastels drawings. I know a lot of people call them paintings, and that's fine. I call them drawings because sometimes, not always, but sometimes, like in this one, I like to let the color of the paper become part of the drawing, of the finished composition. So to me, that's a drawing. Okay. Sometimes I cover up the whole sheet. I will show you some examples of things demos I've done in class where it's both ways. But for this one, I am going to leave this gray of the paper as part of my composition. Okay. So what I'm doing now, you'll see, is I am getting in my values. So I'm treating this, I'm actually drawing this as if I were going to keep it just in this nice sort of burnt sienna color. Okay, it's like a dark Venetian red sort of a tone. Okay, and the reason I picked that color is because we're working with greens, and green and red are opposite one another on the color wheel. So this is a good opportunity for me to introduce some of the complementary color into this little sketch. Okay, so there we go. So that's basically what your underdrawing should look like. There should be enough on the page that you can tell what you're looking at. You should be able to see a range of values. So it's not just an outline. It's actually got shading on it, right? They look three-dimensional. I could pick those up off the page. That's what your underpainting should look like. Because when you have that, what that does is that allows you to go in on top of it with your color and say, oh, that's where I need to be the darkest. This is where I need to be the lightest. You've already mapped in your value, so it makes it much easier for you to get a good result. Okay, so let's pick out a couple of greens here. I've got like what's equal to sort of a Prussian blue, And then I have this green that's kind of looks like that mix that I had of Prussian blue and raw sienna. And then I've got this one, which is a really nice appley green. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, I want to get some blues in here, right? I just want to make things a little darker. So I'm going to throw a little bit of this blue on the shadow areas, particularly on the apple, because I want the apple to have a little bit more of a bluish tone than the pear. Okay, then I'm going to go on top of that with some of this nice sort of bluish green. Remember, I kept more blue greens in the apple on the one that I did before. And then I need to get some shadow tones going on down here. So I'm going to take this sort of cobalt or ultramarine-ish looking pastel. Notice I broke the pastel so that they are about an inch and a half or so in length, and I use the side of them. Draw with the side whenever possible. It allows you to cover more space. It makes it more efficient. It just allows you to really, really start getting your drawing established on your paper. Okay, so this one I'm going to just go over with the other green that I had, because I'm going to make this one a little bit lighter, a little bit more yellow green. There we go. Okay, so now we've started to get some color blocked in onto this. Now watch what happens. Pastels are like oils or acrylics in that they are opaque. So you can put light on top of dark when you work in pastel. That's why we use an underpainting, because it's very easy for me to just go right over that and put my color down. Okay, so it's all about working in the layers. So that first layer is monochrome. The second layer starts to be in color, okay? And since I'm not working on sanded paper, I have to be careful. When every time you put more pastel on top of this, what happens is you start to use up the surface of the paper, okay? If you're working on a sanded paper, I refer to that as the tooth, okay? Sanded paper obviously has a lot more tooth than non-sanded paper, okay? But you can still use this and you can still get some really beautiful effects. Okay, so let's just get a little more of this yellowish tone down over here at the right. Now, I like to, personally, when I'm not teaching and I'm not doing this on Zoom, I much prefer to have my work upright when I work with pastel. But for demo purposes, I'm just working flat. If you get any pastel buildup, what you should do is don't blow on it. Never blow on it. Okay, that just sends toxic stuff back at you. We don't want to breathe in dust. Take it over a trash can, or if you're outside, just give it a little whack, just like right over the can, so that any loose dust that's accumulating on your sheet just falls right off. Okay, so there we go. You can take, what I love about this gray paper is there's a gray pastel that's in here that's almost the same color of it. So you can just sort of imply a little bit of some edges. You can clean up any edges that you need to. So it's really kind of nice. There we go. So let's get a little of that back in there. And I'm going to drag some of it over some of this shadow tone that I put down as well. Okay, so we've got our apple pretty well established in there. Now it's time for the pear. And I said before that I want that pear to have a lot more of a yellowish feel to it than the apple does. So I'm just using my yellow new pastel, and I'm using the side. See how I'm making these nice strokes? I'm not coloring. Marks, nice bold marks that follow the contour, the shape of that pear. Okay, gonna square off those edges. We don't want fake fruit, right? There we go. So we've got some of that. Look at how nice and round that gets. I like the idea of let's get a little color on this pear. Pears sometimes have a little bit of some sort of reddish orange. Let's put a little bit of that sort of in the middle there for some interest, right? And throw a little bit more of the yellow on top of it. You can always layer color upon color with pastel. That's the way that you really, really start to get some beautiful effects. Okay, so I'm just pulling a little bit more of some of that sort of lime grass green and a little bit more of the bluish green in here, just so I can darken it up a bit and get it to look a little bit more three-dimensional. Okay, right, we want to have these right in here wherever I want it to be the lightest, that's where I'm going to press hard with my pastel. Okay, I've seen the lightest parts. It's like right in here. Okay, so I want to get a little bit of that in. No matter how badly you want to blow on this, if you're working on it, don't do it. It's bad for you. And it gets all throughout the room and it makes a mess. What you want to do is, like I said before, just give it a good shake right over the garbage can. All right, so there we go. We got our little drawing started here. Looks pretty good, but we can make it look better. And the way that we can do that is by increasing our darks, right? You always want to make sure you've got a really good range of dark. So I'm going to take a little bit of this dark brown and just go over my stems a little bit. I'm even going to take, oh, horrors, black. Everyone says, don't use black, don't use black. You can use it if you use it sparingly, okay? And use it so that it's just to accent your darkest darks. I was saying before that I don't use the soft pastels very much. There are a few that are made by Sennelier that are wonderful for this purpose of really darkening up the darks. Now, right underneath it, right underneath the fruit, remember what I had said in the watercolor, just make sure that it's darkest where it's closest to the fruit where it meets the table. See how I just pulled that away from it and just like let it fade out? Okay, let's say I got too dark. Let's say I did that. Well, it's pastel. With watercolor, oh well, you're stuck. With pastel, I can just take some of this gray that I have that's very similar to the color of the paper, and I could just drag some of that through. And when you do that, what happens is it unifies it. It really makes it look connected. Okay, last thing that I want to do to these is I'm going to take a little bit of this sort of creamy whitish tone, okay, and I'm going to put some highlights on this, right? Because we want to make this pop. So there's a nice big highlight that's right over there. There's some smaller ones that if I really squint at it, that are kind of wrapping themselves around that little centerpiece here. So I'm going to get some of that in. I definitely see one right up here on the pear. There's a little hint of one over here. We're going to make it a little stronger, just so that that surface looks like it's maybe got a little sheen to it, right? So we've got some of that in there. And I always like to add a hint of some cool highlights too. So this is that like light robin's egg blue. I sort of see a little bit of that maybe back in here, just a hint, and maybe over here on this shadow side. It's always nice to have a little bit of variety and unexpected color on your piece. It just gives it, you know, sort of a little bit more of an interesting look. And then if you really want to pop it, let's try this. Let's be daring. I'm going to take a little of that creamy white and I'm just going to throw a little bit into the background behind the pastel, behind the pear and the apple where they're a little bit darker, so that they maybe pop forward a little bit more and just sort of transition. And we can put a little bit of that on the table as well. I don't want to go too crazy with that because I kind of want to, as I said before, I love the idea of keeping some of the gray of the paper as part of my drawing. Okay, as part of the whole composition. Let's darken this up a teeny tiny bit, darken it up, lighten it up by pressing harder. I get confused sometimes which direction I'm going in. There we go. And we'll put a little highlight, just a little bit on that stem there to just kind of pop it forward. We can do the same thing on this one, not too much, just a little teeny tiny bit. And that's going to be about it. So these are the sticks that I used, and I'm still recording, so you'll be able to see this later on, but I'll just sort of line them up there so you can kind of get an idea. So all of these made this little drawing up by me layering one color on top of the other. I just want a little more red in that. I love getting that reddish tone in there. I think it just makes it that much more lively. I'm even gonna get, I just want a little more yellow, a little more color on here. And as I said, if you're not doing a demo and you don't need to have things flat on the table for people to see, it's definitely nice to work upright with pastels. I find also that I like to stand rather than sit, but when I'm doing a demo online, I can't really do that. Okay, so that's the pastel demo.
I hope you enjoyed the demo. I do a demo just like this in every class. And what's even better is I record it and share it with the group afterwards so that you can watch as many times as you want whenever it's convenient. If this sounds like something that would be of interest to you, head over to my website, cooloff.com, to see all the classes that I have lined up. I can promise you two things. If you take a class with me, you'll learn a lot and you'll have lots of fun.